This is our COVID Roundup and CDC update for November 22nd, 2024. Starting off looking to our COVID variant tracker, we're seeing that KP3.1.1 is starting to head its way out, while on the other hand, XEC is continuing to grow very quickly, where KP3.1.1 is making up about 44% of all variants in proportion in the US, and XEC is making up about 38% of all variants in proportion. And we see a similar thing when looking to our neighbors to the north, where from Canada's epidemiologic tracker, KP3.1.1, this dark blue has been heading its way out for a while now, making up only about 35% of all variants in proportion in Canada, while currently in Canada, XEC is the dominant variant, making up about 38% of all variants in proportion. What all of this means is that we're going to be ending our diversification period where we have lots and lots of different variants at the same time, and that we're going to enter our predominant wave period, where XEC will be the predominant driver of the COVID wave this winter. Some evidence towards this in Mike Honey's analysis is that the D-fluke variants have remained dominant, but their growth has stalled and has started to ebb out, as we've seen with the KP3.1.1, but also remember the MC clade is also part of that D-fluke family, while on the other hand, XEC has continued to grow pretty steadily. And something that's very interesting is that we have two dominant waves very close together with a very short period of diversification, which at least to me indicates that these cycles are starting to appear faster and faster, because the trend that happens is that we have a dominant variant that appears and takes over for a while, and then we have a period of diversification where lots of variants exist at the same time, and then a dominant one occurs again and takes over. And what's sort of concerning to me is that we've had the rise of two dominant variants within a 3-month span of one another, but this is essentially what happens when COVID is left to mutate unchecked. And at least at this time, we can be pretty confident that XEC will certainly be that variant that is going to be leading this winter wave. And we can say this because in all countries where it's being monitored right now, it's growing very steadily and consistently across all of them. And then to help us get into the nuts and bolts of it all, we have Raj's COVID variant tracker, where we're seeing weekly decreases in the KP2 and KP3 families, with the only real increases being in the XEC family with a minor increase in the MC family. And here that is blown up for a better view. And then of note, we have one additional new variant that popped up, which is NL2. That very quickly went to not being on my radar to having 2.3% of all variants in proportion in Raj's tracker, which is a pretty marked jump. But now that we have a better sense of what variants are circulating right now and what are going to be the drivers of our waves, we can look to the Walgreens Respiratory Index of the COVID-19 positivity tracker. So we've had quite the slowdown where we're hitting that trough point that we talked about prior, where there was only a 0.3% change in the test positivity since the prior week. But what is more interesting is these red places right here on this map. This shows where the Walgreens test positivity is increasing by greater than 25% of the prior week. And we can see that everywhere in the center of the country is starting to have increased levels of test positivity for COVID. And in the past, the general spatial pattern is that we have early increases in the east. This switches over to the center of the country, to the west, and then after this happens, we usually have it start blasting up everywhere, meaning that this is a pretty good indication from the spatial trends that we're going to be heading right back up very shortly. So finally, let's look over to our wastewater reporting trends in the 28 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan in California. So first, I'd like to emphasize that we're in a very unusual period in our data, where we've had a very delayed start to our winter wave. It's been holding very constant in our wastewater levels. So to paint a better picture, I marked off in red here all of the starts of the winter waves in the past, where we had December, we had mid-October, then early October, and now we're currently in like mid to late November, and we still haven't truly started our winter wave yet. And there could be two things that could really be influencing this. So one, we had a very early start to our summer wave, and it was a very long summer wave. So that could be playing a part in this, but also the fact that, but there's also the unaddressed problem that the wastewater data has been shown to be underreporting. And this is because of mutations in the nucleocapsid protein, which is used to detect it. And by detect it, I mean detecting COVID in the wastewater. We detect the N2 and N1 proteins on COVID. We've assumed this to be a 1-to-1 ratio, but we've shown in prior papers that this has been changing, this has been shifting, where the N2 to N1 ratio has been getting lower, which means that the true value is actually much higher than what the reported value is, and that could be something we're seeing here now reflected in the data very severely. So if XEC, for instance, has sufficient enough mutations to the nucleocapsid protein, then it would be drastically underrepresented in the wastewater values. And so far, I haven't seen any of the major wastewater facilities address this very known problem. So it very well could be a combination of these two factors. But regardless, what the data is showing in California is a constant hold of the values, which would currently be estimated at about moderate levels. And then looking over to the 148 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan in the US, here we're actually starting to see increases in the signals across various states, where the data is starting to spike very sharply, meaning that it's very likely that we're going to start seeing dramatic increases in the COVID wastewater levels shortly.